getting back to this, I'm going to give you a little history. So I was like 24 years old and I really started getting into magic. I dabbled before then. Around this time, I ran into people that were affiliated with the OTO. I was reading books like Cosmic Consciousness by Robert Anton Wilson. Fascinated with the idea that there's this other self, that there's this higher self, like a guardian angel or whatever you want. And I was really into exploring that. I was doing psychedelics, and I was like, wow, all these different states of consciousness. And I'm reading these books, like I was reading Crowley and stuff like that. And I was very fascinated with the way he described things because it reminded me of some of the experiences that I had when I was on psychedelics. So around the age of 24, met 23, 24, met some OTO people, took my Minerval initiation, and my first degree about 2 or 3 months after that. And while I was part of the OTO, I met a guy that had moved from Boston who was OTO, and he was a big time Golden Dawn magician. He was an adept of the Golden Dawn at 5'6". That's, not something to just ignore. So, we started talking. I was just like a fledgling guy. I could barely do my LBRPs, and drawing pentagrams. Really, like I was drawing these little tiny pentagrams in the air. And he's like, "Show me how to do an LBRP," and I was like, "Okay, Ata Malku Vekebura Vekedula Leolam Amen," and draw this little pentagram. And he goes, "No, no, 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 no. When you draw a pentagram, you draw it with your full body. So it's the full length of your arm, and you draw these large pentagrams in the air." And it just blew my mind. It was like, oh, I'm, cool. So we spoke, became close in these, in these interactions. And, I was reading Mumford. I think it's Robert Mumford, if I'm correct. He's got a book on Tatwas. You can still get it. You used to be able to get cards, Tatwa cards. But if you want like a set, I used to have one. They are very expensive. You're going to spend like $150. They're really beautiful. The colors are crisp and bright, and they're great for scrying. But they're super expensive. Okay, you can make your own. If you can work with, if all you have is Publisher, which is all I used with to make my little example of one, you can make your own Tatwa cards. And we're going to get into the Tatwas and what they are. So I kind of felt like I was reaching like a crest with my practices. And I started talking with David, and I'm like, I didn't know of any active Golden Dawn in Florida. He took me over to meet the Ciceros. I was like, I don't know if I want to go initiate with them. I just thought they were goofy old people. And, so he's like, well, we were talking about the initiation ceremonies and all that. And I was like, so they're going through the elements, right? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, could I just do these elemental ceremonies on my own? He goes, absolutely. So I was reading Mumford. He's describing the Tatwas. The Tatwas, for reference, are Hindu. They have a place in like tantric yogas. Again, it's 5 primary elements: spirit, air, water, fire, and earth. Okay, the shapes are a little different than most people would conceptualize, but like essentially they work in a similar fashion. And what's great is they're just geometric shapes. There's nothing complex to it. There's not like a symbol there, in the usual way, like an astrological symbol or a triangle or anything. It's just or like a triangle with a line through it. They're very simple. It's just a solid color and a solid shape. So in Mumford's book, he describes that you start with the earth element, and that you go through, learning how to relax your body, relax your mind, and gaze into these shapes until you see a portal. Okay. When I say portal, for me, it was like a window. When I'm talking about like seeing a portal, when I'm scrying, it's like looking through a window and then suddenly like climbing through the window or passing through the window. So I was trying this, and I wasn't really getting anything of any kind that was noteworthy in any way whatsoever. I told this to my Golden Dawn associate, and he says, well, we can open an earth temple and, pull out the tatwas and start scrying. And he's like, in the meantime, before we get around to that ceremony, he's like, why don't you go out in nature and go sit in the dirt? Just go sit, and try to feel the element. So I did just that. I went to a park on a quiet day when there wasn't many people there, found a place under a tree, and just sat there in the dirt. Sat there with the bugs. I did that. I sat there. I took a fistful of dirt with me. Still was like, I could feel something going on. Like I felt like I was being watched while I was, kind of meditating. It was more like just communing with nature. I took the dirt with me, put it in a little pouch, took it to the ceremony that we did that night, that we did like a week later. It wasn't that night. It was like a week or so later. So there's 4 of us. We're in this guy's living room. And, he asked me to do a banishing, lesser banishing ritual. The pentagram, like, boom, did that. We sprinkled water in the 4 corners, the 4 quadrants, the 4 directions, the 4 elements, sprinkling some water to purify. And then we took a censer and we did the same with the incense, burning frankincense to the 4 directions. And from that point, David said some invocations that were meaningful to him. I believe he recited the invocation of the gnomes by Eliphas Levi. I'm pretty sure that's what he did. And then we proceeded he drew the pentagram of Earth in the northern quadrant. And the way they do it in the Golden Dawn is they draw they draw a circle in the air, like a portal, okay? And then they draw the equilibrium pentagram of spirit, the passive one, saying the God name that goes along with it. And then drawing the invoking pentagram of Earth while reciting a pretty cool invocation. And I'm going to put this invocation in the comments of that post I made earlier. So you're drawing this pentagram while you're reciting these words, all right? And then the next thing you know, the element of Earth is there present in the room. And once we did that, we allowed the energies to come into the room, fill us up. We did some pore breathing. Is anybody here familiar with Franz Bardon's pore breathing technique? Basically, you fill up your body with the element, and you more or less do it through the pores of your skin. Like imagine the pores of your skin are receptacles, and drawing the energy of the element into your body and filling yourself up until you can't contain anything else. Okay. And so we sat there and just drew in through using our breath and our imaginations, drew in that element of Earth, however we saw it as individuals. And once I felt full of that energy, right, I went and I took my Tatwa card, which you'll see on Facebook. It's this big yellow square. And I just let my eyes softly gaze on it. Now, there's a thing that people try and do when they're scrying, and they'll be like, I can't see anything. I'm trying to scry. Things like that. And it's very counterproductive. Scrying is a relaxed thing. You want to have a soft gaze. You can blink. You're allowed to blink. Blinking won't interrupt scrying. All right? Have a soft gaze. Just gaze on the object. And for me, after I have that soft gaze and I gaze for like 5 to 10 minutes. I don't think I've ever gazed at something for more than 10 minutes. I usually close my eyes and just allow the imagery to come forth. I don't want to say visions. That's kind of a loaded word, but we'll say imagery. And I was amazed when I closed my eyes. I could still see the yellow square. you know, in my mind, you know, and as I did, it suddenly like became a landscape, like it was like a window, and I was looking through a landscape, and I just kind of allowed my consciousness to go through like you do in a dream. If you ever have had a lucid dream and you're like, I want to go over there, you're just suddenly there. You either zoom over there or you just pop, you're there. And I just floated through this window, saw the landscape, and I don't want to spoil it for you too much with my experiences. Okay, I don't want to color your experience of what it could be like. I'm just trying to tell, you know, let you know like kind of things you can expect. And I saw all these little squatty people all over the place. And they started singing these strange songs that I could hear. Kind of reminded me of a Salvia Divinorum experience. And I sat there and they showed me some things and told me some things. And then I decided I'd been there long enough, and I went back the way I came until I was on the other side of the portal. And I stood up and I did a closing of the veil gesture, and that was that. I'm not going to say like compare, like everybody had a vision that night. Some felt more relevant than others. A large part of what determined someone's visions had to do with the amount of preparation they did and their participation in the ceremony. So with that in mind, one of the first things I want to talk about if you choose to do this, is that first step of prep should be just going out into a place in nature where you feel safe and comfortable, where you feel like you won't be disturbed, and go out there and just sit. Just go out there and sit with the spirits. You know, and if you have to go out there repeatedly before you feel something, go out there until you start to feel like, okay, this is starting to feel like there's something around here. You know, you can make a little offering, you could like burn a little tobacco or